Hi, I'm Laura.
Hey, I'm Stefan, and you're listening to Attributed, a podcast library by Dreamdata.
The purpose of it is to store and share all the knowledge that we have gathered across Dreamdata employees through our LinkedIn Lives, podcasts, and webinars.
The typical topics you'll find here can be stuff like marketing,
Sales,
B2B ads,
operations,
social selling maybe. Welcome everybody to today's session with us at Dreamdata. Today we have with us joining Brandon Rhoten. Did I get that right, Brandon?
You did.
Awesome. We're going to talk about something that I think so easily gets very shallow when you see the usual LinkedIn post saying, oh, you shouldn't do brand, you should focus on performance, or like performance sucks, you should only do brand and so forth. But we actually have here today somebody who knows this firsthand and also sees, Brendan said to me before we went live, more than 1,000 media plans a month. So he knows all about what's working and what's not working when we're talking brand and performance. But Brandon, one of the reasons why I also found you to be a very interesting guest for our show here is also that like the typical guest is somebody who has been doing B2B marketing for 10, 20 years and has like some sort of specialty there. But your background is a bit different than our usual guests. So I'd love you just to kind of talk a little bit about how you arrived at your CMO role at GroundTruth and like where's your kind of marketing journey, education path coming from?
Yeah. Well, I did start at an agency that did B2B marketing. At the time, it was called Gyro. Now it's part of Merkle. So it started in B2B, and that's kind of where I learned the ropes of marketing. But actually ended up going to Wendy's, the fast food company, and I was the first person with digital in their title, built their digital social program, built their digital marketing program, and then I ran all their consumer-facing communications, including digital, social, but also traditional media for about 6 years. That led me, and that did great work, helped drive traffic to the brand, helped get the brand growing, stock price went up, all the good stuff happened. The team won a bunch of awards. That led to me being CMO of Papa John's and Potbelly, two other restaurant concepts. And then I decided I was good. I was done working. So I decided just to stop working and got bored after like 3 months. So joined a bunch of boards. That led to one of the relationships I built, as a CMO, spending, $7 or $8 billion over my time at those restaurants. Led to a relationship with GroundTruth, which was one of the performance marketing companies we work with, and joined them as an advisor. That led to them asking me to come on as CMO and help them rework some of their products and help rework their positioning and brand. So yeah, a little strange path, but I guess in the end, I was sort of buying the media, and then that led to working for an ad platform that's actually building out the infrastructure of the media and the measurement of that media. So strange path, but landed in a good spot, I think.
Absolutely. Maybe just because you're such an expert, can you just like anecdotally talk about when you're advertising for restaurants, what works and what doesn't work? I love to hear a good real world example.
Yeah, so this kind of gets to the thesis of, I think, this discussion. A lot of people assume that to get daily traffic to your restaurant, that's the lifeblood of a restaurant, getting people to show up to a retailer or a restaurant, that you use primarily performance marketing to do that, or primarily brand marketing to do that. So there's kind of two roads. People either build this big brand that seems iconic, think McDonald's as an example, that is sort of ubiquitous and tonnage of media where you're just spending hundreds of millions of dollars a year, or some cases billions of dollars a year to drive awareness for your brand. And then people will just show up. Some people think all you do is the performance marketing stuff, SEM, mobile offers, CRM, all the lower funnel stuff that in theory creates conversion. The magic formula is actually a clean combination of those two things. That's what leads to success for retailers 95% of the time. If you have a differentiated brand that people know about and care about, which is your brand marketing component, and then you pull people through a funnel once they show interest, and that seems so obvious that it's kind of crazy, but if you pull people through the funnel that show interest, give them the things that gets them to get off the couch and show up to your retail location or your restaurant, they show up, and it's provable through a measured funnel. So if you're working with partners that are showing you foot traffic attribution as an example, or are tied into your point of sale systems. They can give you direct attribution of what's happening connected to your media plan. Almost every time you see that is the combination. And as your brand sort of grows, it does shift a bit, like the percentage up funnel versus down funnel, brand versus performance can change, but the combination is the magic. And
Mm.
no brands have that kind of solid combination. Very few. The ones that do are the ones that are consistently successful. So there's a lot of chicken concepts out there in the US right now that are killing it. This chicken right here, Dave's Hot Chicken is one of the fastest growing restaurants in the world.
Really? Oh, wow.
And these guys have a killer funnel. They've got a differentiated brand that's interesting, are doing crazy things like 3D billboards and, drone shows when they open a new store, things that grab attention, that differentiate, that make them interesting, creative, that's actually, worth watching, not just a bite and smile of a chicken sandwich. And then they have a refined funnel using social at the top. And then they have a refined funnel, down funnel, that actually is hitting people as they're making the decision. So you get kind of in the back of your mind that this is a brand I would consider, and then when you get hungry in that 30 minutes before lunch, that critical moment, because that's when you make your decision. And when you go to lunch, where you're going is like literally 30 minutes before. You use performance marketing, use mobile ads, use SEM, use mapping systems, use these down funnel tools, even CRM like emails, that gets you to actually say, okay, instead of this location, I'm going to go to Dave's. But there's a lot of cases like that. You look at
Yeah.
Wingstop, you look at Raising Cane's, you look at Kava right now is doing an amazing job with their funnel. A solid funnel makes a huge difference. It's not just about the brand. It's not just about performance. It's about the recipe that leads to that conversion, balancing the two.
That's so interesting. Can you maybe help us getting a bit more into your brain? So when you say brand, top of funnel, what are the specific elements that exist there? And the same thing for once you'd set a mobile and a few SEM and a few other things. But in the brand bucket, what are the levers that these companies pull on?
Yeah, so I think you break it down into a couple pieces. One is creative. So what does it look like? Like, what do you actually consume? Generally, it establishes why the brand is different, why the brand is interesting. So it's not a giant picture of a hamburger or a chicken sandwich. That's not differentiating inherently, unless your stuff is so different, like early
Yeah.
days Chipotle, where they had the gargantuan burrito. That is different. But in most cases, the product itself is probably not the primary differentiator, probably something else. It's probably your attitude, it's probably your service, it's probably the experience at the restaurant, it's probably a very unique thing about your product that nobody else can lay claim to or isn't laying claim to at any scale. So the messaging is usually about differentiation and not saying you're different. Like, the old saying is you don't say you're funny, you tell a joke. Tell the joke, like express what makes you different and
Good one.
interesting at that high level. So that's what the creative looks like. The media at that top of funnel is typically something with serious reach to your primary target. So these are the things that have scale to your target. And when I say scale, I don't mean a Super Bowl ad necessarily.
No.
That's everybody, right? It's to your target. So in the case of, a lot of restaurants, for example, this is CTV targeted around your restaurants. This is digital out of home boards targeted around your restaurants. This is streaming audio targeted around your restaurants. Big reach, but targeted to the people that are most likely to convert. So it's broad reach to the target, not just broad reach in general. It's not media tonnage. And it is a differentiation message that's interesting. That, my personal LLC is called Boring Kills Brands. I really think that it has to be unique, it has to be interesting, it's got to catch your attention, it's got to be
Yeah.
something that will stick in the back of your mind. So when you get to the bottom of the funnel, so when you hit them in that moment where they're making the decision, they actually remember your brand and have a leaning towards your brand. So that's the top of the funnel of the brand stuff. The
That's so
performance stuff
interesting, Brandon. Yeah,
is much more.
I'm also super curious in these like now when you say CTV, it's connected TVs, like when you stream them from a certain platform where you're able to like pin them he's in this city or something like that, right?
Yep, and I'm a huge fan of addressable media that like CTV, like streaming audio, like digital out of home, like really broad digital buys, social buys that can be targeted. that you can connect back to the bottom of the funnel. Because if you just do a super broad buy, so let's say I'm buying a market with television, it's I'm buying a specific DMA for television. You can't actually track, is the person that's seeing that ad and potentially reacting to that ad going to receive that bottom funnel message? You have to do the same thing at the bottom and just make it super broad.
Mm.
If you use connected TV, if you use streaming audio, if you use digital out of home, use these broader, tools that have significant reach, you can immediately connect that same impression, that same delivery of the ad down funnel. So you're staying targeted, but it's still got significant reach. So this is just the modern way of doing what used to be, run a TV ad in a market and then do a mail drop to all the houses that are near your store. Now that was super wasteful and completely untrackable in many cases, unless someone brought in a coupon or something cheesy.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
But this is the modern version of that, I would argue. So
So
yeah, it's targeted things that are usually digital in nature, because everything's digital. If you're watching television right now, 90% of it is digital, even if you don't realize it's digital.
mm.
Unless you're watching cable or over-the-air television, which is not the majority of people that these restaurants and retailers are going after. You using these digital channels are much more effective and much more measurable.
Yeah, and then the lower funnel things that also be super interesting to hear. Kind of how do you then enable these things? Is it about like it's for breakfast, it's for lunchtime, and you need
It
to
can
switch
be.
on in those exact time slots?
It can be. So it's connected to the top of the funnel. So the message should connect to the top of the funnel, but it should be more functional. So the top
Yeah,
is emotional. The top should get you interested and care. The bottom is functional. So it actually gets you to choose that brand at that time. So for some brands that are deal driven, and many brands aren't, but a lot of brands are, if you're deal driven, it might be the offer that you have. If you're product driven, it might be the product that you specifically want them to buy. If you are heavy at a certain day part like lunch, it might be this is on your way to work, or this is 2 miles from your house. It
I
might be
love
like
it.
directional. So it becomes functional at that point. So you get the emotional side where you actually care and have interest, and then you get the functional side of like, okay, show up
Mm.
and actually fulfill that emotional thing that we created with a transaction. So typically what that looks like is I'm Googling what's nearby for lunch, and you're using SEM to deliver it. You have mobile ads that are running as you're consuming things on your phone, in the 20 minutes before you leave the office or your house to go pick up lunch. That is mobile ads that actually have like location awareness. So they
Mm.
know that, it's 2 miles from your house and you drive by that restaurant, on your way home or on your way to wherever you're going next.
Yeah,
So it's like smart down funnel media that's connected to the top. So you are served the emotional, brand ad, and then gets the functional piece that says, okay, now you can actually act upon that message that was delivered at the top of the funnel and make you actually want to show up and transact. And then it gets even deeper than that, because their performance can then retarget based
mm.
on, did someone show up?
Yeah.
Then you retarget people that looked like the people that showed up, which starts the process over in a way that has a higher conversion rate, because it's people that, are likely to actually fulfill, the ask that you have to show up for a
Yeah.
transaction.
It's funny when you work with food, you literally have the right message at the right time, whereas all of us in B2B are more like dreaming about what's the right time. But
But
lunch
I
is
tell you
lunch.
though, I would totally argue B2B is the same way. So obviously GroundTruth advertises, right? We've got a campaign out right now, and our top of funnel is using Oscar from The Office right now.
Yeah,
And he's a CFO explaining to marketers that they're using marketing math and that's a bunch of garbage. You should be measuring real business results, things like traffic, people
yeah,
showing up to your retail location or your restaurant. That's the emotional message. I have a funnel completely below that, based on each industry, based on the people I'm targeting, based on your role at the company, saying, okay, here's the thing you can buy that does this real
yeah,
business results effect. So real business results, and the idea of you should care about the P&L and your actual, like, what you're achieving with your marketing, the outcomes. And then the bottom of the funnel is all about CTV can do that for you, and here's how.
mm,
Digital out of home can do that for you, and here's how. Mobile can do that for you, and here's how. So I'm doing the same thing on a B2B scale as I do on a B2C scale. It just looks a little different, and I don't get, to target somebody before lunch. I get to target somebody before their quarter ends and they're
yeah.
choosing new partners.
Yeah,
or as
yeah,
they're building a new campaign, or as they're considering, what their agency should actually offer up to them for the next year's plan.
yeah.
So the cycle's longer, but it's still a very similar structure.
That's very fun. So Hassan is like, speaking of measurement, he's asking here a question for Brandon. What's your stance on attribution for tough to attribute brand tactics? How do you manage non-marketer execs asking for the attribution?
Yeah, that's a really good question. And at the end of the day, you do have to align to your business partners to understand what they value in the P&L, because does the CFO, the CEO, your board could care less about the number of likes you get on a post. They could
Yeah,
care less about the reach of the impressions of your press release. They just don't care about that. That doesn't matter. That doesn't influence the business in a meaningful way. So for them, you have to understand the metrics they care about. So I'll go to a restaurant just because, again, I've got a lot of experience there and we work with a lot of restaurants. They care about, are more people showing up today than yesterday? Are new people showing up today? So people that haven't visited before. Is our frequency increasing? Are our loyalists coming more often? So if you start with that particular outcome, are more people showing up today than yesterday? And then you back up and saying, well, how do I measure that? Well, if you're working with the right partners, the media should give you an insight into that. It should give you foot traffic attribution connected to your media, or it should give you loyalty, frequency of guest, or it should even be able to tie into your point of sale system and give you check growth and an idea of, is it actually driving a higher transaction for each store? So I think you have to define with your
yeah,
partners what is the outcome they desire. And then once you know the outcome they desire, you work your way backwards to, how do I build a funnel to achieve that outcome? So in your marketing department, absolutely, you're probably going to talk about the marketing metrics that matter to you. But as soon as you get outside of anybody with marketing in their title, you stop talking about marketing. You don't ever say that ever again. Instead,
yeah,
you say, this campaign, this funnel drove this foot traffic, or drove this check growth, or changed this outcome in
yeah,
frequency, or made more people download our app or visit our website, or whatever the thing is that they think directly connects to revenue growth, because that's what they care about, is revenue growth. At the end of the day, marketing is an investment to get to a revenue outcome. It's not an intent to get a lion at Cannes.
no.
Even though that's great, it's awesome when I get to send teams to pick up a lion, but that's not the point. The point is not likes and all this stuff. The point is to get to an outcome.
Let's pin that, Brendan, to everybody. When you're speaking with people outside of marketing, you let go of the marketing geeky metrics that you like, and then you talk the language of the ones that are receiving the information.
You have to. And in marketing, you should be comfortable with those real metrics.
Yeah,
And you need to connect the dots between your activities. And some of them are correlations, but a lot of times you can get down to causation with the right tools, with the right partners.
yeah,
You can get down to really close and do things like pre-post and out of control tests that tell you, is there a lift,
yeah,
from these activities? What changes in product mix? You got all these variables in your data that you can connect directly back to marketing efforts. And as long as your data is relatively clean and your partners are strong, you should have a pretty good case for, this is affecting traffic, as an example, foot traffic.
yeah.
And then you get more investment in marketing.
Are people also doing like physical counting in the restaurants sometimes? We ran this
They do.
campaign with these guys. Are more people act like? Can I see them with my eyes?
Yep, they do. They do. And in many cases, the point of sale system will do that work for them. So it'll tell
Huh.
them their number of transactions. It'll tell them the size of those transactions, whether check growth is improving, for
Hmm.
example. So the POS will do a lot of the work there, the point of sale system. But again, your media partner should give you signals there, because sometimes that's delayed. Sometimes you don't get that instantly.
Hmm.
So you should have a sense of estimated foot traffic that you can drive, or estimated
Yeah.
check growth that you can affect. And then you should be able to validate with your partners that it's actually happening in the business, the
Hmm.
outcomes occurring.
Super interesting. So, like, if we change gear and then say, so you have so much knowledge about how to get somebody to a restaurant or how to get a consumer to do certain things. What have you taken from that knowledge into your role now as a B2B CMO? You need to recruit physical shops, physical restaurants to use GroundTruth. Is you call it a software? Do you call it a service? Or
It's a platform. It's a
it's a
platform. So
platform?
it's kind
Yeah.
of SaaS, but it's a platform. So you can manage it yourself, or you can work with our team to actually build out a
Yeah.
campaign or a program.
It sounds super nice.
Yeah, so I mean, at the end of the day, we obviously we have our own funnel to actually pull folks in that would want to use Ground Truth as a platform or tool. A lot of agencies work with us, so generally we're advertising to agencies, but we're also do work with brands directly or small businesses
Mm.
directly. So really, what one I think us the way we understand how to actually affect their marketing outcomes matters because most companies you talk to, most platforms you work with, they're trying to sell you media. So their desire is to say, here's reach you can buy. Here's, the impressions and the CPMs of those impressions. Well, again, that's useful information for marketers. It's completely useless outside of marketing. They want to see what outcomes you can drive.
Mm.
So I think one is we understand what people are trying to achieve with their media and then can help them get to that outcome. I think the second thing that's important from our perspective is we're media agnostic. So if you go to a lot of platforms or a lot of channels, you're using their walled garden, and nothing wrong with using Meta, nothing wrong with using you name the platform, Google, whatever it is, but you're playing only in their world. We work on the open web, so our stuff works across the channels that will work for your target. So we don't start with you need to be on Instagram. We start with where is the person you're trying to acquire for the outcome you want.
Yeah.
And that leads to here are the places that your ads should run to affect that. And here's the funnel that creates that ultimate output of
Mm.
marketing outcome that you want. So I think that's a huge differentiator too. At the end of the day, we're not a one-stop shop for just CTV or social or whatever. At the end of the day, we build things based on the outcome, and
Mm.
we'll kind of work in almost any major digital channel to affect that outcome.
Yeah. And then as a CMO, Brendan, what are you doing to establish the brand? And what are you doing to kind of like drive performance? We talked a little bit about eating times and stuff like
Yeah.
that before. What are the components that you're trying to kind of use for branding Ground Truth?
Yeah. So we have a funnel. We have a top of funnel campaign running with Oscar from The Office right now.
Mm.
And Oscar is the finance guy talking to the marketer over what looks like a Zoom and basically beating up the marketer saying, you're using marketing math here.
Mm.
I don't even understand this equation. Likes over shares times, reach. What does that mean? How does that get to what we're trying to do with these dollars? One of the ads is along the lines of, you think I should give you more budget because you got likes? That's perception is like, don't use the language of marketing to
Yeah.
finance or to the CEO or to the board. So you have a top funnel campaign right now running to grab people's attention, hopefully, about real business results and driving outcomes with your marketing. That leads to, once you're exposed to that ad and show any sort of interest, you watch the ad all the way through, you click on it, you comment on it, whatever it is. That leads to, and we're running that in a bunch of channels, that leads to a lower funnel, which starts talking about the products that we offer. So if you're interested in CTV, if you're interested in mobile, if you're interested in digital out of home, if you're interested in streaming audio, if you're interested in just measurement, you just want to know the foot traffic that's happening to your competitors. Those are all things that the Ground Truth platform is capable of doing. So once you're exposed to that top funnel message, grab the people who care about outcomes, care about real business results. Then we start telling you about here's the way you can accomplish that using Ground Truth as a platform. And then that leads to a sales process. So generally, we're advertising to agencies, sometimes brands. We do have a lot of brands that work directly with us, but mostly agencies. And those agencies essentially that work with us or the brands are the ones that they've got their CFO, their CEO saying, hey, I need this outcome.
Mm.
They see the message, it's interesting to them. And then they understand as marketers or media buyers, these are the tools that I can use to get to that outcome. And this is a partner I could use to try to affect that outcome.
Yeah. So how far does the like marketing life cycle go for you at Ground Truth? Is there like a handover to your sales department at some point, or like when does that happen?
There is, and it depends on how you work with us. If you work with our
Yeah.
self-serve platform, you could activate immediately. People
Ah,
sometimes,
yeah, yeah.
working with us in days or weeks. But a lot of cases, these are agencies that are thinking about partners that are trying to, plan out a campaign that's 3 months or 6 months away. So they're not going to run media for 6 months or 9 months in many cases. So our sales cycle can be long, especially for
Mm.
large
Yeah,
campaigns.
yeah, yeah.
So I generally see like the leading indicators within days or weeks of starting, my pushes for Ground Truth. And then I see like the revenue show up within a quarter or two begin to show up. And really it lasts for 12 to 18 months. And we have partners that we've established that have been with us for years now. So kind of the lifetime value can be huge, which makes our ROAS huge. Our ROI, starts around 6 to 1. So they give me $1, I can give them back 6 typically.
Oh wow.
But it can go by business line up to 15 or 20 to 1.
Yeah.
Just because we have some business lines where the campaigns are giant. It might cost me a few $100 to, talk to someone and get them interested. And then they end up spending millions of dollars, which is obviously a huge return. So it's very different than restaurant world where, you're trying to get 1 to 2 or 1 to 3 or 1 to 4 ROI. In this case, oftentimes I can do much, much better than that because of the transaction size and the duration. I just don't see it immediately. I see it, a quarter or two away.
Yeah. Just because you're such a skilled and experienced marketer, Brandon, could you just elaborate this kind of concept of leading and lacking metrics, and how should a CMO be thinking about these two buckets?
Yeah. So, and again, I always go back to the things that matter to the business as a whole. So even my leading indicators tend not to be, things like comments or engagement or likes or shares or stuff like that. That stuff to me, again, you can't speak that language outside of marketing, I don't think. With any effect.
Remember this, people.
That's right. It just doesn't, they don't care. They don't understand it. So at the end of the day, where I'm going to is I start with leading indicators that the business understands connects to revenue at some point. It's not immediate revenue, but connects at some point.
Yeah.
An example in B2B, the very simple example is, does someone sign up for a demo? Does someone go to the product, PDP, the product web page site? So they're not just on your homepage, if they've gotten down to actually look at the products.
Yeah.
Is someone reaching out to a salesperson? Has someone had a sales call? Is someone, do you have multiple people within the same organization looking at your materials or reaching out to salespeople?
Yeah.
So the leading indicators I use are things like qualified leads as they come through. And then ultimately, are people engaging with content that matters to get to a transaction that we know has a high propensity to lead to, revenue at the back end? So I have like 3 or 4 leading indicators that I present. And what that does is that gives evidence to the organization that what we're doing is catching attention, but it also gives evidence that there's revenue to come from this campaign. And then once the revenue starts to come in, then I can start calculating things like ROI on the actual effort.
Yeah, brilliant. Alicia's asking a question here, which I'll throw you a curveball on it. So first you replied as a B2C case and then a B2B case, but I'll read it out to you here, Brendan. What do you do if a brand partner comes to you for help, but doesn't understand who their target audience is, or they just want to target everyone within 3 miles?
Yeah, so that's really common. So oftentimes people assume that it's just the people nearby are the people who care. I think media testing can get you to an answer there pretty quickly. You can actually understand who converts and throw out. I don't like demographics. I don't like just geographics. I like psychographics and behavior. I want to see, because you could prove that within 3 miles has a higher propensity, but the truth is that's kind of a BS metric. It's like saying, most people have a car wreck within 3 miles less. It's because they're always within 3 miles of their house. You're coming and going from your house within 3 miles every time.
Yeah.
It's like, that's just the odds. That's literally like percentages. That's not real. So I typically would do media testing that would confirm who converts. So you run a campaign to who your presumed target is, psychographic ideally. This is the kind of person that would, most be likely to buy my product. And then you see who converts, and then you double down on that and double down on niches that you find within that segment. So generally, I use media testing to figure that out. You can do all kinds of research to understand it, but the media testing gives you a really clean sense of who actually is buying your product and showing up. And if you took target lookalikes, do you see more of the same? And that lets you confirm who your target is.
What bullets is it that you want to see filled out here? Do you want to arrive at a certain kind of ideal customer description that contains age, gender, sport, whatever favorite?
Yeah. I mean, and demographics are useful for media buying, right? So if you can use demographics, that's okay. But I actually find that generally it's psychographics, it's behaviors that matter more. So, let's jump into food for a second, just because, again, that was my world for a really long time. People who like spicy food aren't all age 15 to 24. They're just not true.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, I know plenty of 17-year-olds that hate spicy food and plenty of 60-year-olds that love spicy food.
Yeah.
That's kind of an irrelevant thing outside of traditional media targeting. Yes, that's how you have to buy television broadly. That's how you have to buy, radio if you're buying that sort of thing. But digital marketing doesn't have to work that way. Digital marketing can work based on intent, based on behavior, based on preference. So I'd rather target the people that are most likely to eat spicy food than the people that are 15 to 24, whatever that age range I said was.
Yeah.
So really for me, the media testing can help you define those things. Where do they spend their time? What do they consume from a media perspective? What programming do they consume? Where do they actually make decisions? And what platforms do they use to make those decisions? So if it turns out that a lot of people on Snapchat like spicy food, great, run more Snapchat. Who cares? We
Mm.
shouldn't be precious about who our target is. We should be precious about who converts at the end of the day.
Yeah.
So for me, it really does boil down to media testing and using channels that give you enough information about behaviors or psychographics that then you can then double down on what works and spend more money on what causes conversion.
Super cool. Now I'll throw the ball to you again, reading it out as like a B2B case. What do you do if a company comes to you and doesn't understand their target audience? Like, what should a B2B CMO be doing then to kind of find the right target audience?
Yeah, I argue it's the same process. It's the same.
Yeah.
People try to separate B2B and B2C a lot, and I'm just not seeing the separation as much as
Yeah.
most people do. The sales cycles are longer. You're going to have to talk to more people because many people are involved in a decision. All that's true. But when you're going to dinner with your family, there's a lot of people involved in the decision too. So I don't think they're as different as people make them out to be. And
That's true.
I'll give you an example from our world in B2B. Oftentimes we'll target, the chief marketing officer when we're trying to communicate for a marketing product.
Mm.
I've been a chief marketing officer a long time. I don't make decisions on what platforms we use. I don't. I have people that make decisions on what platform we use that I trust. My media person, my social person, whatever that person is.
Yeah.
So when people target the CMO, yeah, it makes sense for the brand layer because you want them aware that you exist. But you actually have to target the people who are actively choosing and deciding which partners to put on the list to consider. So, and that can be people from finance.
Mm.
That can be people from, because what ultimately happens is you need to catch the attention of the people that are going to put you on the list as a potential partner. And then you actually need to make sure you're communicating to the people that will veto that when that person brings it forward. So the finance person, when you say, I want to work with this new partner, they say, I've never heard of them. I want to work with these guys. I've heard of them. Everybody's got those biases. When you bring that thing forward to your chief marketing officer and they say, I want to work with this platform. Well, but I've heard of this platform. Maybe you should look at these guys instead.
Yeah.
So to me, the trick is you go full funnel with that person that needs to put you on the list and ultimately might even be one of the primaries of the decision. You go parts of the funnel depending on the people in the organization that actually affect that decision. So your CMO might need to get the brand level stuff. Your finance team might need to get the deep down in the weeds product level measurement stuff that
Mm.
actually shows there's an effect. So I think you have to be more strategic in how you communicate. But again, B2C works the same way. It's just not as deep, right? If I'm going to advertise kids meals, I need mom to want to show up because the kid ain't driving to the store, my restaurant.
That's true.
So I need to communicate to mom and to kid and in different ways because kid might care about the toy in the kid's meal if I'm a QSR fast food place.
Mm.
Mom doesn't care about the toy. Mom cares about that there's something for her to eat or for the whole family to eat or that the food's nutritious or
Yeah.
that it's a deal that she can afford or whatever it is. So this stuff is chess. It isn't checkers. You have to think about it in terms of like who affects the decision, who needs to hear what to influence the decision, and then who's going to veto the decision at the end and make sure they hear the right message. And that's hard. That's not as easy as it sounds. It's
Yeah.
takes thoughtful planning to figure out.
Also makes me like question that age-old top-down selling method, where kind of you just go for the CEO to like squeeze product through the organization. I just don't see that motion working anymore. Like, it's the people
And
from the
it's
front.
some organizations that are very, authoritarian, maybe that does work, but that's not how most organizations work.
No.
And good organizations, people that would be good partners do not work that way.
Yeah.
Because they hire good people they trust to affect outcomes rather than just dictating what happens in an organization. So I agree. That doesn't mean you don't communicate to the CEO, but it also means that that's not the only point of communication, and they need to hear something different potentially than the line level buyer who's actually affecting the transaction directly.
Yeah, like we put out a benchmark report earlier this year where we analyzed the deals of our customers, and the average deal had 7 stakeholders associated to it. And I think your example is great, Brandon. That like if you haven't been like creating brand awareness with the CMO who's the ultimate signer of the product, you're gonna struggle if your product is being brought in and you're not one of the products that he knows or she knows in this category. Then you'll get the question, why are you choosing these? Because I've never seen them before. Whereas if the whole
Right.
buying group has kind of already been kind of massaged, then the likelihood of the deal sliding through will be a lot more easy.
You're totally right. And again, the messaging does need to shift a bit depending on the level. The CMO is not going to care about the nitty-gritty of how the product works, but the person who's going to be running the product every day, the person with hands on keyboard, is going to care. The CMO is going to care about the top level stuff. So it's really about choosing the right message. I mean, this is marketing 101, right? Right message, right person, right time, and really with the right funnel that leads them down a path to see that you're a viable potential partner,
Yeah.
or a restaurant where you should buy a chicken sandwich. It doesn't matter. It's all the same stuff, just more stakeholders and longer cycles in B2B generally.
I'm thinking about this to change chapter a little bit, the creative side of B2B marketing in particular, and this is probably where we also should draw on some of your B2C experience of like what actually gets attention, what works, and like instead of being boring, how can you actually stand out? And I noticed you said like some restaurant did a drone show or something like
Yeah,
that.
Dave's. I was talking about Dave's. They're one of the people that we work with. But again, there's a lot of restaurants, a lot of retailers, period, that have great examples. So I guess this is a cliche at this point, but the marketing world has saturated everyone at this point. You see hundreds of ads a day, right?
Everyone's
And
saturated.
my God, and flipping through LinkedIn, you're gonna, so thinking B2B and just going very specific there, you're gonna see the same, product feature benefit discussion that is the kind of staple cliche of B2B marketing all day long, and ignore 99.9% of them. Now you do need to see that stuff when you get down funnel. So if you've been exposed to the top and shown interest, then yeah, you need to understand how the product works and
Yeah.
what's the offering. But really, I think most B2B relies on feature benefit discussions versus on something that's more emotional. And we make decisions emotionally. I don't care if you drive a Toyota Camry, you're making that decision emotionally. It's the most
Yeah.
practical car on the planet,
Yeah.
but you still decided you wanted to be practical. That was important to you emotionally, to be practical.
Mm.
So I do believe you have to do things that grab attention,
Yeah.
even at that B2B level. And when brands, use something like a celebrity as an example, which is kind of a very common tactic,
Mm.
I think most times they just plop the celebrity and they have them walk through their office. That's what they all look like.
Mm.
90% of them, where the celebrity's walking through the office saying this technology is so
Yeah.
great, because like they're still doing features and benefits.
Yeah.
It's still the same thing. They're just using, a famous face to do it. So I love the B2B ads that take that B2C idea of, let's use something like a familiar face. Doesn't have to be a celebrity, it could be anything,
Yeah.
or
Snoop Dogg.
great creative, but something that grabs your attention, and then you deliver it in a way that is different. So like
Mm.
the campaign we're running right now, we have Oscar from The Office
Yeah.
speaking to you like a Zoom call and talking to the marketer. And to us, that was a very interesting way to express that. It's more like literally you're talking to your finance person about your campaign, and he's complaining about you bringing forward all these garbage metrics that don't mean anything. So everybody's had that conversation early in their career, maybe late in their career if they haven't figured out that's not the right way to do it.
I just now realized, Brendan, that there's a character in The
Yeah,
Office called
that's
I thought it was your CFO, but now it's okay. Now it's even better. Then
yeah, it's the dude from
it's
The
officially
Office. So
celebrity.
he's
Super.
he's delivering that message to grab attention, and we think that that's kind of the thing that when you're scrolling through, it's going to cause a little pause, going to cause you a second, like, why is Oscar talking to me?
Yeah.
And what he's talking to you about, again, is that conversation that we've all had with finance, again, hopefully earlier in our career, where they're
Mm.
just frustrated because
Yeah.
marketing isn't showing an impact on their business,
Yeah.
or even expressing impact. And the really crazy part about all that is most marketing will have an impact, and it's actually the marketer's inability to demonstrate what that impact is that causes the program to fail internally. It's internal communications that's the problem, because you're using vanity metrics, using things like likes or shares or engagement
Yeah.
or reach or impressions or whatever. I got a cheap CPM. I remember early in days at a big company I worked for, what the agency presented to me was, we got the cheapest CPM. I'm like, I don't care about your CPM. That doesn't matter. Your cost per
Expression is
thousand
cheaper.
impressions is
Yeah.
irrelevant. Did more people show up because we did this campaign? Yes or no?
Yeah.
And it's
Yeah.
crickets.
Yeah.
Like, get to the thing that actually matters for people. So working with the right partners, having the right measurement in place is critical to understand, are we actually affecting the business?
Yeah.
And you don't even need to have great technology internally. Just work with good partners that can give you a correlation analysis, can give you a sense of direction of what's happening to your business, so you can express that more broadly, and people can start seeing internally your marketing as an investment versus as an expense, because that's how finance sees it until you prove otherwise.
That's super interesting. I'm really interested in this creative element, which you really seem to master, Brandon. Is there guidance to give on how much you should spend on the creative and how much you should spend on the distribution? Or is that like a wrong way to think about it? Or how do you evaluate that your creative is good enough to get a good amount of budget behind it?
Yeah, I do have a rough rule of thumb that I have to spend at least 70% on distribution,
Yeah.
and maximum 30%, and that's for smaller budgets, because you get to big budgets and it's like a rounding error. It doesn't matter. At
Yeah.
Wendy's, at Papa John's, at these places, like, you'd spend pennies on the dollar to what you spend on distribution. But at
Mhm.
smaller brands, I do think you have to spend the majority on distribution, because if it's not exposed to anybody, the creative's
Yeah.
not useful.
Yeah. Yeah.
And you can't count on anything going viral ever. That's the most
Yeah.
ridiculous, marketing
Make a
mindset.
viral.
We just make great creative, we'll put it in the world, and everybody will show up. That's garbage. And yeah, you should try to make great creative, but that's more luck than it is, planning. My rule of thumb is, does it actually make the target pause and
Yeah.
pay attention? And I know that sounds super obvious and kind of, trite, but that's really what matters. Does the creative connect emotionally and make someone stop and pay attention to it?
Yeah.
And you can see that in your metrics pretty fast. You can see if you're running on a social platform, if you're running on a mobile platform, if you're running on even CTV. You can see, are people, if you have skippable ads as an example, are people engaging at a rate that's reasonable,
Yeah.
that gives you a sense that that's great. But again, those are marketing metrics that give you a sense of, is the creative effective? But I do think you should use the B2C tricks. The B2C tricks are pretty obvious. You'd be interesting. I think I mentioned to you before we started, my LLC is called Boring Kills Brands. I just
Yeah.
believe that really, really thoroughly,
Yeah.
that you have to make sure you have something that they call thumb stoppable, I guess,
Yeah.
in social.
Yeah. Yeah.
What just grabs attention, and it has to be core to your brand. So people would ask me all the time, like at Wendy's, why did you fight with other brands on Twitter? Well, that's what our brand was. Like, Where's the Beef was the first brand that ever, called out other brands for their garbage and making bad products on television. First time ever it happened was Wendy's in the 80s. So that's just in the 2010s and now 2020s. That's the new articulation of that. So it's got to be true to your brand, but it also has to be genuinely interesting, and not just to your board or your executives, because your board and your executives aren't your target. And frankly, most people, when you have, what's the saying? When you create when you take creative and you make it by committee, instead of a horse, you get a camel. That's what just happened.
Yeah.
This hodgepodge of things that are vanilla. You have to find the things that actually resonate with the target, have data that shows that it resonates, and then scale those things.
Mm.
So I do think you spend more on distribution than you do creative, and you don't have to spend a fortune. You can find ways. I mean, I love the guys over at Cameo, for example, that app that lets you have a celebrity directly talk. They have a B2B model there. I brand actually, one of my Potbelly was the first brand that did a B2B program with them back in the day, because that's what we wanted to use them for, was use someone who is known to the target and actually deliver an ad that doesn't cost, $250,000 to produce.
Do you get
Because you
the?
find other ways.
I've been super. Like, do you get, what do you call it? The rights to use the celebrity along with the deal?
You can. That's part of the deal that they can arrange.
I've
But again,
been thinking about that, Brandon. Like, they have such a great roster, but it's like, no way I'm getting Chuck Norris to put his
yeah.
face on our campaign.
And you'd be surprised. You'd be surprised. Like, we paid something for Oscar for the
Yeah.
GroundTruth campaign, but we did not pay anything like I would have paid at a Wendy's or a Papa John's for something like that. We use
Yeah.
JJ Watt or 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 Peyton Manning or something like that, or the NCAA relationship, all these big things, yeah, you're going to pay six figures
Yeah.
plus for
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
celebrity endorsement or the face or whatever it is. And again, I'm not always condoning celebrity endorsements. I just think that's an example. But you can find people. How many programs are out there on Netflix and HBO Max and Hulu and all these things? Like, I wanted to get the guy for our next campaign, the Milchek from Severance. That's an example of someone that is interesting, is culturally relevant, is going to be known, but
Hmm.
isn't necessarily going to cost you $1 million to have as a face. So
I'm
you just
getting
got to
so
be
many
scrappy.
ideas right now.
And you don't need a celebrity. I mean, look, I got brands behind me. Like, I love just collecting stuff from brands
Yeah.
and showing off like what's smart.
Yeah.
You can use packaging like Liquid Death. You can
Mm.
use niches like extreme sports like Red Bull. You can use
Mm.
stunts like Packy did the one chip challenge that blew
Yeah.
up forereate.
Yeah.
You got Savannah Bananas are just ruling social media because they're doing something with a twist that's interesting and different.
Yeah.
You creative. I really think it boils down to, like, be interesting to the
Yeah.
target, not
Yeah.
to your CEO necessarily, but to your target, so they respond and pay attention to the thing you put in the world. It's just as important as having good distribution, as having a piece of creative that is actually going to get someone to care.
That's brilliant. Thank you so much for that, Brandon. That was educational for me as well. One last question before we wrap up. Um, how do you then pull how do you extract the value of the brand investment in the sales team, or how do you get kind of like how can the sales team exploit that we've done a good job investing in our brand, we're interesting, we have the Oscar or something like that? What are the mechanics that the sales team can use from the brand investment?
Yeah, so frankly, I'm still figuring that out because the B2C world doesn't have sales teams. This is my first time I've had a sales team. I've been here,
Yeah.
3+ years, but the first time I had a sales team, so I'm still learning that. I will say, they love our sales team loves having a campaign that they feel proud to forward on, that they feel proud to show in a pitch, that they feel proud that someone paid attention to our marketing, and we're a marketing platform. So it's like we actually kind of we're a painter that paints our own house sort of thing.
Mm.
So there's a pride level there. We also do integrate it into our content. So we integrate, Oscar and the messaging, the real business results messaging, into everything.
Yeah.
We're reworking a bunch of our products around outcomes. We have some of it in there right now, but our platform in 6 months is going to let you come in and choose what is the outcome you want, and then we build a plan around the outcome. So it's about real business results as the starting point. So it's a work in process. It's not perfect yet, but integrating those elements into the pitch materials, integrating them into the product materials on the website, integrating them into the product itself, I think is a critical component of this whole process. You can't just have a cool ad and everything works itself out. You do have to
Mm.
build up structure to make it work. Just like if you run an ad for a restaurant and then you show up and it's nothing like the ad,
Mm.
that's bad, right? Burger King got all kinds of flack because they'd have giant pictures of beautiful cheeseburgers, and you'd come in and it looks like this depressing squash thing. So you have to
Yeah.
deliver, through the process to create trust and ultimately deliver on the promise you're making in marketing.
I guess that at the end of the day, it's about taking the brand assets that you have, the messaging that you have, and making sure it's as full funnel as you call it. What you see very early days could also be parts of the sales deck. It's the
Yes.
same question, so it's the image of Oscar saying something that opens the deck, or so it kind of feels integrated in some sense.
Yep. It's all got to be connected so people actually pay attention.
Cool. Okay, Brendan, I'm gonna set you up for a last pitch before we signed off, and I think it's basically I just want you kind of to summarize your point here about why brand and performance should go hand in hand. So if you kind of were to kind of repeat the like quintessential of what you've been trying to explain to us here today, how do you make a brand and performance go hand in hand, and why should it go hand in hand?
Yeah. If nobody's paying attention, they'll never convert. So brand makes them pay attention, makes them care. The bottom of the funnel, the performance component, makes them show up. So if you don't have both working together cleanly and good measurement throughout, you're never going to have an effective funnel. It's never going to be efficient from a media standpoint. And at the end of the day, you're not going to be able to communicate to your organization why marketing works. And marketing is going to be seen as an expense instead of an investment.
That's very, very crisp. I think a lot of people has also kind of, you're seeing this movement more about the 95-5 rule that LinkedIn talks so much about, that like most people are not in market right now.
Yeah,
But if you haven't been advertising to them while they're out of market, once they go in market, you're not going to be on that list. So you have to like build that brand and be different, even when they're not out shopping right now.
totally true. And especially in B2B where you have really long sales cycles. So if they're out of market now but they pay attention enough to remember you when in 6 months they're in market, and then it takes them another 6 months to actually buy your product, well, that ad you ran a year ago matters a lot.
Yeah.
So I really think you do have to think about it in a more strategic way than just, I have Google running and someone clicked and went to my website. That's the old way of doing things, and I would argue didn't even work then, but certainly doesn't work now in a much more complicated ecosystem.
That's great. Cool, Brandon. That's it. Thank you so much for taking the time to talk with us. And I really got inspired to get back at the creative part again. So thank you so much for that. And to everybody who's listening to Brandon and I, thank you so much for spending the time with us. Brandon, if people want to talk with you or mentor from you or just learn who you are, what should they do?
Yeah, well, if you're interested in GroundTruth, groundtruth.com is a good starting spot. We do have a try.groundtruth.com. You can play around with the platform. So jump out there if you want to check it out. If you want to reach out to me personally, LinkedIn's probably your best source. There's not a whole lot of people with the last name Rhoten in the world, and there's a lot less with Brandon Rhoten in the world. So just searching for me on LinkedIn, you'll probably find me. And I'd love to connect. I love talking to smart marketers. I love talking to people that are trying to build a solid funnel. I love hearing stories of brands that are killing it. So certainly do reach out to GroundTruth or directly to me.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining in, and have a great day.
We hope you like listening to us. Subscribe to our podcast and the ones that we have been guests on.
And if you have any feedback for us, just do let us know. And should there be a guest that you think we should be talking to, then pitch us.
We're looking forward to seeing you.